Yep. Inside, I want to kill myself. We are on an 0-7 run over the last 2 days. After tonight was just complete bullshit. So that's how I'm going to start off this show. Horrible Sunday, 1-5. I don't even know what to tell you about that. I just don't want to do this anymore. I have never seen anything like this, man. With the slump continuing, 2 straight losses, not a good day at all. 0-4. I just have not had a good season, man. What can this slump that I'm on? The slump continues. I've reached a new peak, actually. I'm going to burn my Bruins hat, man. I don't know what is going on with the Bruins. March 8th, is that what it is? I don't even know. It's March 9th, I think. Who even knows, man? I don't know what day it is anymore. I don't even know what day it is anymore, man. Back with you after the worst day that I could possibly have. Back with you, as I always am. Until I die, at least. 0-2 yesterday, and yesterday did not go well for me. 0-5. The worst month that I've ever had in my 18 years doing this. I don't know what to even tell you about this anymore. Broke the slump yesterday as the slump discontinues. The slump continues. Somebody fucking kill me, please. I don't even know what I should do at this point other than potentially end it all.
These losses stay with me. They fester, Jerry.
What's up, everybody? It's Toad back with you. Toadstool Sports. It is Tuesday, St. Patrick's Day, March 17th. So I'm being Irish by wearing my Celtics hat. There you go. Got to support the team, man. Got to support the team.
Hey, will you sit down? Hey, man, I'm just trying to support the team.
Will you sit down? You're disturbing everybody. Sit down.
Oh, yeah, because you're a Rangers fan and you know I'm messing with their heads.
That actually hurts because the Devils beat the Bruins yesterday, which I told you that would happen. Although the Bruins, they had a 5-on-3 pretty late in the third period in a tied game and didn't score. So isn't that just great? But I will be happy about the Celtics getting a win last night against the Suns in a close game. So there you go. Yesterday was bad, of course, 0-2. The Calgary Flames. I mean, don't look at the final score in that game. I mean, it was closer than the final score looked. I don't really think it was the wrong side. I mean, they did have more shots. They won more faceoffs. They were winning the game early. They did give up an empty net goal at the end of the game, and it was 3-2. I want to say into the third period or maybe really late in the second period. Yeah, I mean, they definitely had chances to at least push that thing and cover the puck line, but no. And then, of course, we lost on the Washington Wizards by a half point, so that's really fun. They were, like, hovering right around that 7 mark for, it felt like the entire fourth quarter. Like, I don't know, I wasn't really paying attention to it, but I'm like, oh, they're down 7, they're down 8, they're down 7, they're down 8. I'm like, oh, come on, man. And then they lose by exactly 8. Even though the 7 is the key-ish number in basketball where you stop intentionally fouling at that point. Although, of course, I don't know if they did, but if you intentionally foul at 6, of course, you might give up 2 free throws and lose by 8. So, yeah, I'm pissed about it. We're going to move on to today. I'm going to have one play today, and it is going to be in the NIT. The NIT is starting, man. Not to be ignored if you can find some angles to look at there. The first round is a little bit tricky, but I think we do have some angles to work with in the one play that I have, and that's where I'm going with it. We'll start with college basketball. March Madness, the actual tournament officially starts. I consider March Madness to be like all the conference tournaments, really, but we do have the play-in games starting tonight on True TV as usual, although I guess Disney's taking it over within the next couple of years, which angers me. The first game up is always one of the 16 seed play-in games, and it is UMBC, the winners of the American East, is that what it's called? And Howard out of the MEAC. Now, UMBC, I mean, everybody, I feel like all the talk is UMBC beat Virginia that one year back in 2018 or whatever as a 16 seed. So that alone, I feel like the public is going to maybe bet this game because, oh, my God, it's the start of March Madness. Let's bet some of these games. UMBC, hey, I remember them. They beat Virginia. I feel like the public is going to be betting UMBC for that reason. I would go the other way with it. This is not the same year, not the same team. The conference is really bad this year. Both these teams came out of horrible conferences, but the American East was even worse than it usually is. Vermont was way down this year. Now, I am assuming that UMBC is ranked higher than Howard. Yeah, they are. In Ken Baum's rankings, not by much. They're 185. Howard's 207. That's why UMBC is a favorite here. Although, actually, it looks like they're going to go off an underdog because they're down from 1 to a pick'em now. All the money is coming in on Howard. 69% of the tickets are on UMBC. 60% of the cash on Howard. It feels like in these opening round games, the team that you don't expect to win, like, always wins pretty much. I like Howard in this one, man. Howard, they're a more experienced team, I believe. I don't know how many returning starters they really do have, but this Howard team has made this tournament like 3 of the last 4 years or 4 of the last 5 or something like that. So I assume they have guys who have been on some of those teams still on their team. So, yeah, I think Howard is going to be overlooked here. That's the way I would look here because their conference is just considered to be one of the worst always, and the American East sometimes has teams that get in and, do damage in the tournament. Like Vermont just had wins, UMBC, whatever. But, yeah, I like Howard here, man. I don't remember what they did in the tournament. I think they skipped the play-in last year, Howard, if I remember correct. Maybe I'm wrong about that, but I think they were one of the 16 seeds that didn't have to play in the play-in last year, so they lost, obviously. But whatever. I like Howard here. And then the more impactful play-in game after that is NC State and Texas trying to play into an 11 seed, and the winner of this would play BYU in the first round. Texas has dropped from a 1-point favorite to a pick'em. We don't really see the percentages yet here, although the placement of the 0% here leads me to believe that the cash percentage is actually majority on Texas right now. This is a tough call for me. I kind of agree with Texas. These teams are both really similar, though. Like, they're both good on offense. They're both bad on defense. Texas does play slower than NC State does, and Texas, I believe, is the much more unlucky team this year, although they were both pretty unlucky, according to Ken Baum. But I also don't like the ACC as much. I think Texas definitely faced a more difficult schedule in the SEC. You also kind of have to take into account, like, what did these teams do last? How did they get knocked out of their conference tournaments, whatever? Texas had a really bad loss, right? Like, they lost as a pretty big favorite to Ole Miss. I know Ole Miss really impressed in that tournament and looked good, but NC State lost in, a more acceptable manner. And this is like what the public is going to think. Oh, NC State lost to like Virginia, I think, or something like that by 7. Like, that's not a bad looking loss. Texas losing to Ole Miss looks so bad that I think nobody's going to want them. I like Texas in this game. Texas also, if they have returning starters from last year, they're going to remember what happened last year. They were in one of the play-ins last year. They were in the last day of play-ins last year, and they had like a 20-something point lead over Xavier and somehow lost the game anyway. So I think if Texas has guys back from that team, they're going to remember that. And they have this, I'm pretty sure they have the same, wait, do they have the same coach? Maybe they don't. No, I think they don't have the same coach anymore because I think they brought in Sean Miller this year, but whatever. If there are any guys from that remember, and Texas remembers that as a program, like, there's no way they should have lost that game. And now basically they kind of get like a redo in the first 4 here. Like, let's not do that again. Let's actually win the game this time. So I would lean to Texas here. Texas is the more imbalanced team. So, I don't really want to have money on either of these games or anything. I probably feel strongly about Howard than this game. But if we look at Texas on Ken Baum here, yeah, they're outside of the top 100 on defense, which is not good, but they're almost top 10 offense. NC State is a little bit more balanced, top 20 offense, and inside the top 100 on defense. NC State does play faster than Texas. Like I said, Texas is going to try to slow the game down. A lot of times I do like the team that wants to slow the game down and ugly it up a little bit more, because the team that wants to go fast becomes a little bit more uncomfortable when that happens, and it's easier for the slow down team to control the pace of the game. It's just easier to slow it down. And then, like I said, Texas is 345th, so they're like a bottom 20 team in luck, meaning they've underperformed this year. NC State also has, but, they're like bottom 100 in luck as opposed to bottom 20. And I think people, are going to look at the records too and probably think, oh, NC State, the better team. Also, the talk is NC State got screwed. Like, that's the talk, right? Like, NC State should have been in the tournament instead of Missouri, which I don't really disagree with. I don't know why Missouri got a 10 seed, I guess probably because they had to shuffle the teams around. And they got to play in St. Louis and against a somewhat questionable maybe Miami team. I don't know why that happened. And NC State wound up getting stuck here, which you could see that going both ways, right? Like, NC State might be pissed, but if all the discussion, and you know, that might fire them up, but if all the discussion is NC State is better than this and they deserve to be in the tournament, that almost seems like a death sentence to me. Like, when people are saying that and saying this team is, you know, better than this, it should have been seeded better than this. A lot of times I think people get that wrong and that team winds up losing, and it, you know, can even have like a mental impact there. So yeah, I like Texas in that one. All right. Kyle, what's up? Thanks for hanging out. And then, you know, I think regardless of which team wins that game, you know, I'm tempted to at least pick them in my bracket to beat BYU. BYU, you know, with their injured player there, Saunders. We'll talk about that when we get to it. All right, we also have the NIT on the ESPN networks. Taking over all the ESPNs starting at 6 p.m. I don't remember exactly what the bracket structure looks like in the NIT, but a lot of interesting matchups here. Now, the thing about the NIT is, first round, I'm trying to like identify like who's the most disappointed team here and like do they really want to be here. And so a lot of times I will go against one of those like blue blood teams that usually is in the actual tournament. And I am going to do that here as well, so you probably know what my play is already. I'll talk about that when we get to it. These other games I think are a little bit harder to predict because a lot of cases you're looking at two teams that are coming off losses that should not have happened. And keep in mind that in the NIT, the opening rounds here are hosted by the higher seed. So the higher seed here is actually playing on their home arena, so they get home advantage. So keep that in mind. Not neutral sites until you get to the NIT Final Four, which I don't even know if they still play it in Madison Square Garden or not, because now you have the NIT competing with the CBC, the College Basketball Crown, which is going to start at some point too. And that, I believe, is only in what is that? That's a 16-team tournament, I think. I don't know. And the NIT is 32, I think. Anyway, Liberty is playing George Mason. We know Liberty took a pretty ugly loss in their last game, and they got knocked out of the Conference USA tournament by Missouri State, and Liberty was supposed to win that conference, even though I told you Liberty was very, very overrated. But that was such a bad loss that maybe they do want to redeem themselves from that. George Mason, I actually won here on the show fading George Mason in their tournament loss in the A-10 with St. Bonaventure. I think George Mason definitely was an overrated team this year, but Liberty also was. So that's kind of the question here. Like, you have two teams that are high in Ken Pump's luck index, especially Liberty. So, I mean, I don't want to get involved in this game. Liberty was the second luckiest team in the country. They're pretty prolific offensively, but bad defensively. Liberty also plays really slow, and they're also undersized, but I don't think that's really going to matter against Mason, who isn't, you know, I don't think they're exactly like a huge team either. George Mason's a much more balanced team. They also play slow, but they also are really lucky. And you're asking Mason to lay 5.5 here. Low total because it's expected to be a low-scoring game. I think Liberty probably is the more embarrassed team off of losing to Missouri State, so I would probably slightly lean with the market here towards taking the points with Liberty. Liberty also, you know, the fact that they're on the road here at George Mason is not that big of a deal because both schools are in Virginia, so Liberty doesn't have to travel very far for this. So, you know, it's not going to be that unfamiliar a surrounding to them. 50% of tickets, 80% of the cash on Liberty. So the money is kind of agreeing with Liberty here. And you'll notice that in the NIT schedule makers are actually kind of kind to a lot of the teams, and a lot of the teams are playing games sort of in their region of the country. Next game up is UNC Wilmington and Yale. Yale, you know, really, really should be in the tournament, man. So I think Yale, I don't know, man. They may be the more disappointed team here, even though I think they're clearly the better team. As the odds makers are telling you, they are favored here and at home. Yale really should have won that game against Penn. I mean, I don't know how Yale's going to respond, especially when that just happened on Sunday. You know, like these other teams have had a little bit of time to kind of stew on it and get over it, you know what I mean, or not get over it, depending on the situation. Yale played very recently. UNC Wilmington was the 1 seed in their conference in the Colonial, and I was saying that I thought Hofstra was actually the best team in that conference, and Hofstra did win the tournament there and got into the NCAA tournament. Wilmington, though, a loss to Campbell is not great, although I told you I liked Campbell to cover in that one because UNC Wilmington really, really struggled against fast-paced teams this year. Like William and Mary beat them both times. Campbell was able to beat them there. But maybe UNC Wilmington, the more embarrassed team now. They've had more time off now. They do have to up here in New England right now, though. Actually, I don't know about New Haven here, but up in Boston, it's been 60 degrees the last couple of days, but it's raining. But, yeah, I don't know, man. This is a hard game to figure out. I think Yale maybe hasn't had the time to get over it yet, and Yale's still thinking we should be in the tournament right now. Like, the way they lost that game was ridiculous. Penn with, what's his name? Power, I think is his name, hit multiple threes at the end just to send it into overtime, and then another one in overtime, I think. And Penn, I think, is also playing down one of their best players, too. Yeah, that was just such a fluke, man. I don't know. The money is coming in on UNC Wilmington. I think I would agree. Yale's a 5-point favorite. 57% of tickets, 94% of the cash on Wilmington. I'll agree with it, even though, yes, I agree they're the worst team. Yale does not play fast. So that will play into what UNC Wilmington wants to do, right? Like I said, UNC Wilmington, that's what they want to do. They want to play slow, just like Yale does. They do not want to go up-tempo. Neither of these teams are going to here. Yale is very good on offense, but they're not good on defense. They're actually lucky, according to KenPom. It's 69th in luck, although Penn is also a very lucky team, I believe. Wilmington is lucky as well, but not as lucky, and they're a much more balanced team. And I know I leaned against the balanced team in the George Mason game because George Mason is also balanced. But in this one, I'm going to lean to Wilmington as the more balanced team. They're the better defense getting points in this case, so I'll lean to Wilmington there. And Yale, I think hasn't had time to really get over that disappointment yet. Although maybe they'll be angry, they should have won that game. But when you're like on the verge of being in the tournament, and this is a Yale program that's, I believe they've won the Ivy like 3 years in a row or something. And, they should have done it again. And when you're Yale like that, like, do you really want to be here in the NIT playing against UNC Wilmington? Probably not. So, so I would lean to Wilmington in that one. Wyoming and Wichita State. I've seen some love for Wichita State in this tournament here. Wichita State just lost, though. Like, they're going to, maybe take some time to get over that. They lost in their conference final to South Florida, who it wasn't a close game, though. Like, South Florida had that game in hand pretty much the entire way. Wyoming lost back on, I don't know, when was that? Friday, maybe? But it's a little bit of a travel for Wyoming here because they were just out in Vegas. Now they go to Wichita, although Wichita was just in Birmingham, Alabama for their tournament, and they have to come back here too. Keeping in mind, Yale was just in Ithaca, New York, which isn't that much of a travel spot. Wilmington is having to travel up there from where the hell was their tournament? I don't even remember, although they've been off for a while now, but I forget where their tournament was. Just to go through it quick, George Mason, by the way, was just in D.C. for their tournament, I think, and then Liberty was in Huntsville, Alabama, I want to say. Is that where their tournament was? So a little bit of a weirder travel spot for Liberty there. And then, I don't know, I didn't go over all the travel spots for these teams, but I should have mentioned that the opening round games that I talked about are in Dayton, Ohio, of course, which isn't really helpful to any of those teams particularly. And you got NC State coming up from Charlotte. Texas is coming up from Nashville. So actually, Texas's travel spot is slightly better than NC State's. And then UMBC was playing in, where the hell was the American East tournament? I don't even, they're coming from their home. They played at home in Baltimore. And Howard is coming from Norfolk, Virginia, I think is where their tournament was. I got it all in my mind, man. I'm autistic, so not really a travel advantage for one team or the other there. Just, just to keep that all in mind, So talking about the travel spots there. But anyway, yeah, Wichita, Wyoming. Wyoming's not really a bad team, man. And they took a loss to UNLV. I think Wyoming made a big comeback in that game, if I remember correctly, and almost was able to beat UNLV out in Vegas. Wichita took kind of an uglier loss there. Looking at the Ken Palm rankings here, Wichita, they're a good defense, top 100 defense. Not horrible on offense either, and a pretty unlucky team, according to Ken Palm. Perhaps Wyoming is in somewhat more of a difficult spot here, although they're an unlucky team as well, but they're better on offense than defense. Both teams play slow. Wyoming's still somewhat balanced, though. It looks like the money is indicating on Wyoming right now. Wichita's up to a 6.5-point favorite. And, of course, they are on their home court here. 75% of tickets, only 73% of the cash on Wichita. So the money is indicating towards Wyoming. I don't know. That one, I'm not so sure about that one. I don't really have a good opinion on that one at all, man. I think the travel might be a little bit more difficult for Wyoming in that situation there. A little bit weirder of an environment for them to have to go to there, a little bit out of their area of the country. I don't know if I love Wyoming as much. I mean, I don't know how easy it is to get over a loss against UNLV. I don't know, but Wyoming has more rest after that at the very least. So, and when you're talking about teams that just lost, I don't think the rust is really that much of a factor. And with a slow-paced team, I don't think it's as much of a factor either. But Wyoming does rely more on their offense and their defense, so maybe the rust will hurt a little bit. A lot of things to consider, man. ESPN2 has Davidson having to go to Oklahoma State. I mean, that seems like maybe the most difficult travel spot, except for maybe what St. Thomas has to do here. Davidson, I believe they're in North Carolina. Is that right? They have to go to Oklahoma, to Stillwater to play this game and step up in class and play a Big 12 team. That's not easy, man. Oklahoma State, I know this season wasn't what they wanted it to be. They got knocked out of the Big 12 tournament early. They didn't really have, I mean, I think they probably had aspirations to make the NCAA tournament early in the season, but those went away like midway through the season. Davidson did take a really ugly loss, which I lost on the show here. I don't know what that was, that game against a very overrated St. Joe's team. So Davidson might be pissed about that. This is one of the situations where when you see these NIT games and you do see the little guy like Davidson getting to play one of the big guys like Oklahoma State, the little guy usually does get motivated for it, you know what I mean? Whereas the big guy might be like, oh, come on, we have to play Davidson, you know what I mean? You don't really get excited about playing the little guy, whereas if you're the little guy, you get more excited. Hey, we get to play one of the big guys, you know, and prove ourselves. So that's all something to consider here. That might motivate Davidson a bit more than Oklahoma State will be motivated here. Davidson, though, like I said, they're having to travel in from their tournament was in D.C., I believe, and Oklahoma State was playing in Kansas City. So the travel spot is better for them. The money is coming in on Oklahoma State. They're an 8.5-point favorite. 86% of tickets, 94% of the cash on them. I don't really disagree with Oklahoma State here. They're definitely the better team. The question is, how motivated is Oklahoma State going to be to play Davidson? You know what I mean? Does Oklahoma State want to come in, and are they going to say, yeah, we want to win the NIT here? Maybe, because I don't know. This Oklahoma State team, they're not one of those true, like, blue bloods that's, like, always in the NCAA tournament. You know what I mean? So even though that's, like, their goal to start the season, it's not like they're a team that's constantly in the tournament. And now, like, oh, all of a sudden we're not in the tournament. I don't think they've been in that tournament for a while. I think it seems like they usually do play in the NIT or maybe the Crown now. And it seems like they're usually in one of these games. Oklahoma State, very, very fast, though, which I don't love. I don't love these super fast tempo teams. And they're actually really lucky this year, believe it or not. And they're better on offense than defense, so I don't like any of that, really. Like, matchup-wise, Davidson is the better defense getting points here. They're going to try to slow the game way down. That's what Davidson does. And they are actually kind of lucky as well, according to Ken Palm. But, you know, a lot of times I do like the better defense getting points like Davidson is. So it's just another reason to kind of just stay off the game. But if Oklahoma State is able to speed the game up and they really actually try, I don't think Davidson's going to really do that well in the game. So, again, it all comes down to trying to gauge Oklahoma State's motivation in that game, I really think so, or most of it does. So it's a difficult handicap, really. Stephen F. Austin is playing Tulsa, so Stephen F. Austin gets to stay sort of in the same area of the country. They were just playing in Lake Charles, Louisiana, of course, which, They probably should have a gripe with the Southland because I don't know why McNeese gets to play that tournament on their home floor. But in this case, I'm not that mad about it because McNeese is actually better than Stephen F. Austin, and they made the tournament again. But Stephen F. Austin did lose in the final in that one. But they also lost badly. Like, if it was a close game, I might have a different opinion on this game. Like, if Stephen F. Austin almost won that game, and they were coming off of that, they could be in, like, a letdown spot, you know what I mean? But that game was such a blowout loss. I think it's easier to get over something like that. Tulsa, I mean, they had a blowout loss, too, and that was a loss for me on the show. That was bad. I don't know what that was against Wichita. So, Tulsa was sort of the front runner in the American Conference for a while, even though I do think South Florida is better than they are. And so I think the right team won that conference. But, yeah, I mean, how are these teams going to react? I don't know. It's really difficult to call. Both of these teams were playing basically up until the end of last week. Didn't play too many games in their tournament and whatever. But these teams have had similar rests here. Tulsa is a 7.5-point favorite, down from 8, but it looks like the money is coming in on Tulsa. 62% of tickets, 73% of the cash on Tulsa. Tulsa is a really good offense and not a very good defense. They play mid-tempo, and they're somewhat lucky. As far as who are they playing against? Austin, Stephen F. Austin. Stephen F. Austin, better defense, wants to slow the game down, and also kind of a lucky team. So, again, it's better defense, slow team getting points here, though, Stephen F. Austin. So you have to kind of weigh that against the motivational angles here, you know what I mean? So it's a difficult call in that game, too. The money is saying to lay it with Tulsa. And, again, it's also going to depend on, is Tulsa going to be super motivated? Are they going to be able to speed up the game? All those things are, difficult to kind of figure out there. I feel like I'm overanalyzing these games just for the NIT because we got to get to hockey and NBA here too. But, I'm going to analyze every game of the tournament too. So it's going to get difficult, man. Then we have the next game is St. Thomas having to go to Seattle. That's not an easy trip either for a Summit team that plays in Minnesota, and they were in Sioux Falls, South Dakota for their tournament. St. Thomas did suffer a really ugly loss in their tournament, though, to North Dakota. Really, St. Thomas should have won that game. St. Thomas made a really bad mistake at the end of that game and lost, but the game should not have even really been close. Like, they're so much better than North Dakota. That was in the Summit semifinals. I don't know how that happened. St. Thomas obviously had a shot to beat North Dakota State and win that conference. Now they're playing in the NIT. And they, had a real chance to make their first NCAA tournament bid, and now they're going to have to play Seattle here. Seattle got knocked out of the West Coast Conference tournament. It's somewhere in the middle of the tournament. I believe they lost to, who did they lose to? Santa Clara? No, they lost to Pacific. Yeah, that's right, Pacific. And then I think Pacific lost to Santa Clara. Yeah, so, Seattle, that's probably an easier loss to get over. I don't know. St. Thomas, they were right there, even though it was a game they shouldn't have lost. For St. Thomas, they're sort of a mid-tempo team. They're better on offense than defense, although decently balanced. They're unlucky, according to KenPom, so there is that, meaning that they underperformed. And then we got Seattle here. Seattle's somewhat luckier. Seattle is the better defense, but they're very deficient on offense. They play all these ugly, low-scoring games, even though they're more of a mid-tempo team. So I don't think the tempo will be a concern here, but Seattle is the better defense, and I feel like the public likes offenses, and they really don't like this Seattle team. I'll lean to Seattle in this one. I think it's a weird spot for St. Thomas to have to go out and play on the Pacific Coast at 10 p.m. I don't think they're going to really be excited to do that when they were really close to having that shot to make the tournament for the first time. 75% of tickets, 77% of the cash on them. Seattle's a 2-point favorite. I'd probably lean to Seattle. Maybe even on the money line in that case, so you don't have to worry about the fact that they can't score. Just ask them to win the game. Charles, what's up? Thanks for hanging out. Oh, man, I'm still half asleep here, man. I feel like I just poked my own eye, too. Next game up will be my play. You already know this. This is the only bet that I have for today. We're going to do, this is just the way that I've always kind of handicapped the NIT. We're going to take South Alabama plus 17.5 against Auburn. Auburn, come on, man. They're going from being the overall number 1 seed in the tournament last year, making the Final Four, being, I believe, a tournament team the year before that as well. I think probably the last 3 years they were really good, and they were a highly considered team in the tournament, I think 3 years in a row. Now they're stuck in the NIT. Yeah, I mean, Auburn is the best team in the NIT. I'm not going to deny that. I just think it's questionable, man. They got, Bruce Pearl's son took over, so their coach is fairly inexperienced, hasn't dealt with an NIT environment yet. Is he going to be able to motivate his players here? I don't know, man. Again, this is not a spot that Auburn is really used to. You know what I mean? They're used to being one of the best teams in the country. We're in the tournament. We're trying to win a championship here, and now they're in the NIT. And even worse, they get matched up with a team that's really going to be gunning for them because South Alabama is an in-state little brother to them. So South Alabama is going to get excited about this. Yeah, they're in the NIT. Yeah, they're one of the better teams in their Sun Belt Conference there. I mean, they probably wanted to win their conference. I don't know if they really realistically thought they were going to do that. But South Alabama, the way they lost in that conference tournament was so dumb. They lost to that Georgia Southern team that just got super hot at the right time, and Georgia Southern was just hitting all their threes. Nobody could do anything about it. So South Alabama went down as a big favorite, and it wasn't even a close game in their first game of the tournament. So I actually think South Alabama will be motivated. Hey, we don't want that to be the way our season ended. You know what I mean? And now we get to play one of the big brothers in the state of Alabama. We get to play Auburn. I think they're going to be super excited about this game. They have to go to Auburn, but of course they're staying in their home state of Alabama. And I believe their conference tournament might have been in Alabama too. Where was the Sun Belt? I forget. That was in Pensacola, I think. But still, they really don't have to travel that far for this. Or no, Pensacola was the A-Sun. I don't remember. The A-Sun, maybe. I don't know. They're staying in the south of the United States, though. For Auburn, I mean, not a bad travel spot for them either because they're in North Alabama, and they're just coming in from Nashville. But the problem is, look at how Auburn got knocked out, man. Auburn was 1 win away from making the tournament, possibly, because we know they were the first or second team left out of the NCAA tournament, and they almost beat Tennessee. They had Tennessee totally on the ropes. They were beating Tennessee, which would have been a big win because they're a good team, ranked team. Auburn was winning by 10 with 10 minutes to go in that game, and they wound up completely imploding and losing that game when it felt like they were that close to having a tournament bid, man. I really think that if they won that game, they might have actually made the tournament instead of either Miami, Ohio, or SMU. And now they're here instead, and they have to face one of the little guys. I just don't know how they get excited about it, man. Do I think Auburn's going to lose this game? Probably not, but I like South Alabama to cover, man, against a team whose motivation is going to be really in question. The number did open 19.5, and now it's 17.5. Hopefully that's not going to matter because when you get into a price range like that, it's just a huge number. So hopefully it doesn't land in the middle there. I'll be pissed. 50% of tickets, 70% of the cash on South Alabama. I think we are agreeing with the money side here. And South Alabama, I believe they're the better defense here, too. Auburn, they're really good on offense, top 15, but they're outside the top 100 on defense. And yes, by the way, they are the highest KenPom ranked team not in the tournament, sitting at 38th in the country according to KenPom, so great. They're unlucky. I'm not going to deny that. And they face one of the most difficult schedules. That's all true. I was going to say they play fast, but KenPom is listing them as more of a mid-tempo team. But it does seem like Auburn will just wind up going up-tempo with up-tempo teams. South Alabama is not one of those teams, though. South Alabama is going to try to slow the game way down. And they're not better on offense or defense, but they're a little bit more oriented on defense, but they're a balanced team. Now, I do worry they're lucky, according to KenPom, so there's a huge luck disparity in favor of Auburn here. But, again, this is all about motivation. You got to handicap the NIT a little bit differently, man. So, yeah, I think South Alabama, they're going to try to slow the game down, ugly this thing up. My guess is that Auburn wins this game and they do not cover. They get through, and then maybe Auburn gets a little bit more, excited after getting their legs under them, and maybe Auburn will have a good NIT, but this is a very tricky spot for them. Again, I think they're in kind of a hangover spot off of how they lost that big game in the SEC tournament. South Alabama's more rested, too, because they've had more time off, and they're coming off pretty gross loss that wasn't even really a close game where, they just kind of got unlucky in that one. So, yeah, I like South Alabama. That's the one play that I have today. And then we do have UNLV and UC Irvine in the late game here, where both teams are Pacific Coast teams. Not going to be a big deal, I don't think, for UNLV to have to travel to Irvine, California here. Irvine is, I think, the better team, though. Now, UNLV, they played decently throughout the Mountain West this year. They did take a loss to Utah State, which was expected, even though they beat Utah State twice this year. Utah State, clearly the better team, and just finally was able to change what went wrong and got the best of them. UC Irvine went all the way to the Big West Championship and lost a pretty close game to Hawaii. Actually, I don't know how close it was. I watched some of that, but Hawaii did kind of pull away a little bit at the end. I think maybe UC Irvine's a little bit more hungover after that, even though Irvine, they're basically just staying, they're coming back from Vegas as well. My mistake. So both teams just played in Vegas, and now they're both going to Irvine, California for this. Irvine is a 2.5-point favorite, but the money looks like it is definitely coming in against them. 80% of the tickets, 56% of the cash on them. So the money's indicating on UNLV. I actually agree with that. I would lean towards UNLV as well, but not a strong opinion. The NIT, very, very difficult to handicap, man. All right, let's get hockey and NBA done, and then I'll get out of here. There were a decent amount of hockey games today, but I didn't see anything that I liked, man. I'm trying to be selective with hockey, but, really, I just don't even see any situation that I even like. I didn't see any game that I was even, close to wanting to put on my card, really. The Islanders are at Toronto. Islanders did just beat Calgary, so they're coming off of a win, not a great win, and they've had a couple of days off. Starting a road trip, a lot of times when you start a road trip, you will be focused. They only play Ottawa next, which isn't really that big of a deal. Toronto is coming off beating Minnesota on the road, so I think the spot is worse for Toronto. That was a big win for them, and it was on a back-to-back, by the way. Toronto, I don't remember if that was their first game without Matthews or not, but that was a huge game. Now returning home, it was only a 2-day road trip over the weekend, so not really a huge deal having to return home from that. They're not going to be, having to get a ton of stuff done at home, that piled up while they were gone. But even so, they're playing a third game in 4 days, all in different cities. They got Carolina on deck, which is probably a bigger deal than the Islanders. So I would lean to the Islanders in this one. Probably one of the stronger leans in hockey today, to be honest. Islanders are going to be a really public side. 93% of the tickets, 95% of the cash. They're up to minus 140. I still think that's the right side. The public might be on it as well, but I would lean Islanders there, money line. Or if the price gets too high, maybe you start, doing a split bet. But I don't love, those really, really highly priced road teams. I would hope that it stays in the 140s and take the money line on that if I was going to do anything with it. My Boston Bruins are at Montreal. Bruins played last night, so now they're on a back-to-back. They're having to travel from New Jersey up to Montreal. They're playing a third game in 4 days, fourth game in 6 days, all in different cities. Not easy to do. Last 2 games both went into overtime. Not going to be easy, man. Montreal is staying at home, and they did not play yesterday, and they lost to Anaheim, lost their last 2 home games. So, unfortunately for the Bruins, Montreal looks like the much better spot here. I would lean to Montreal. They're down from minus 170 to minus 162 here. Yeah, it is a rivalry game, so motivation shouldn't be an issue, but the Bruins might kind of run out of steam here, man. 62% of tickets, 86% of the cash on Montreal. I agree with Montreal there. It might be a split puck line bet or, find a minus 1 puck line there. Carolina at Columbus. Carolina really not favored by that much in this game. Partially because they're on the road, but it looks like Columbus getting a little bit of respect in the market. I also don't like the spot for Carolina. They just beat Tampa Bay. Really nice win there. Big game. Both teams really good. Big win for them. Now they got to go to Columbus. They've been stewing on that win for 2 days, which I don't think is good, even though they're rested. I think when you're coming off a big win, you just kind of start thinking about it and feeling good about yourselves. They do have Pittsburgh on deck when they return home tomorrow, which might be a bigger game. They might overlook Columbus, man, even though Columbus has a good record. I just feel like they don't have that weight behind their name where people, it seems like they sneak up on a lot of teams. They're returning home from a road trip, though. They were on the road starting last Tuesday. They also beat Tampa Bay, by the way, on that road trip. They're returning home from a pretty successful road trip, 2-1, with the only loss being at Florida in overtime. They beat Philadelphia on Saturday. Now, they have 2 days off as well. Return home spot I really don't like, though, because a lot of times you will fall into that distraction, have to get back to home life or whatever. But they're playing Carolina, so you got to think they should get motivated for that game, and that should alleviate the distractions a little bit there. I would lean to Columbus in this one. Carolina did drop from -140 to -128. 83% of tickets, 91% of the cash on them. So the money indicating on Carolina a little bit, but I would lean to Columbus as the home underdog there. Money line would be the way I would play that. I can't quite get there with it as a play, but that's, that might be one of the better leans that I have here. TNT and HBO Max has a doubleheader, and both games are not good. My apologies, I guess. But Minnesota at Chicago is the first one, which seems like a bit of a mismatch. And you got Minnesota coming off 3 losses, all at home. The last 2 being pretty ugly to the Rangers and Toronto. Not good. So I think maybe it'll serve Minnesota well to just leave home for a little bit and get a win against a team that's obviously beatable. So I think Minnesota might actually show up with some motivation for this one. They don't have a bigger game on deck. Chicago's been off since Saturday. They're returning over from a road trip, but it was only a quick trip. Thursday, Saturday. They did lose on Saturday in Vegas 4-0, which is pretty ugly. And, theoretically, they should get up for a game against Minnesota. Like, you get excited when these better teams come into your house. But if it's a situation where both teams are going to be motivated and show up, I think Minnesota should get the win here. But you're laying a price for them. They're -178 there. Again, it would be a situation where you'd have to lay a puck line or something on the road, which is not something I really love to do, even though I've done it before. But that game just has to be a pass for me. If both teams are going to be super focused and, both teams have been off for a little while, and under could be in consideration in that one. It looks like the money is coming in towards the under. The number's already down to 6, so not a ton of leeway there, but that would be my opinion there. Nashville at Winnipeg. Nashville just had a really close game against Edmonton on Sunday, man. They went into Edmonton, and there was an empty net goal at the end of that game. They lost 3-1, but that was a one-score game, a one-goal game in the final minutes of regulation there. Edmonton put in an empty netter in the final, minute and a half, so Nashville almost beat Edmonton. Now they're having to come off of that and play Winnipeg. I think it's a little bit of a difficult spot for Nashville here. Winnipeg did just beat St. Louis and should have been in a letdown spot in that game because they'd beaten Colorado the game before that, the night before that. So somehow on a back-to-back with Comrie in net, they were able to still get the win there. Now they're staying at home with momentum. Hellebuck should be back in net for Winnipeg here. So they got their better goaling. It's a pretty tricky spot for Nashville there. I would have to lean to Winnipeg in that one. They're a pretty cheap price, -133. 60% of tickets, 93% of the cash on Winnipeg. It looks like the real money indicating on Winnipeg. I think that is one of the better looks in hockey today as well. If I were to try to order these, I would probably say I might actually think Winnipeg might be the best out of those 3 that I talked about. Then maybe the Islanders, then Columbus. I don't know, man. But yeah, Winnipeg looks like it's a pretty decent spot for them there. I don't think it's good enough that I want to actually add it to my card, but San Jose is at Edmonton. San Jose just had a bad loss, 7-4 at Ottawa. It's a weird travel spot, though. They're playing a 3rd game in 4 days, 4th and 6th, 5th and 8th, all in different cities, and they're having to go from Eastern Canada all the way to Edmonton now with 1 day off. That's a weird travel spot, even though they are coming off a really ugly loss, 7-4, where it looks like they had Brossois in net. I don't even know who the hell that is. Maybe Askarov might be hurt. I have no idea. My guess is it's going to be Nedeljkovic back in net for them, and they did win his last 2 games. So if that's the case, that's not a bad thing for San Jose, I don't think. Coming off a horrible loss, 7-4, they should be motivated. It's just a bit of an odd travel spot there. Now, Edmonton, they're coming off a close call as well. Like I said, they almost lost to Nashville. Well, didn't almost lose, but they were only up 2-1 late in that game against Nashville. Edmonton's coming off of that. They do have Florida on deck, though, so that is the concern. They might look ahead because, of course, we know Florida beat them in the Stanley Cup Finals the last 2 years. Now, Edmonton did already play them once this year, and they did beat them, so they did get a little bit of revenge already, but that's still probably a big deal playing Florida. And then Tampa after that. So with Edmonton, you got to worry about the look ahead here. This is a very tricky handicap. The money is indicating on San Jose for what it's worth. Edmonton down from minus 190 to minus 167 here. 60% of tickets on them, 63% of the cash on San Jose. So some real market indicators on San Jose here. I think part of the reason why the line moves so much is because of the San Jose goalie situation. I would imagine that Nedeljkovic gets a little bit more respect there. I'm gonna agree with the market and agree with the San Jose side there. You know, if you want to grab an underdog puck line, money line, split the bet up, whatever you want to do there, that's the way I would lean in that game, but I don't think it's strong enough. Florida at Vancouver. I don't know where I would put that. I don't even want to rank these, man. I don't know where I would put that in my rankings, but those are my opinions on those games. Florida just lost really badly at Seattle, 6-2. Seattle not even a very good team. Florida's definitely down this year, but maybe they'll actually get up for a game after such a bad loss. But it's tough to get up for Vancouver when they're like the worst team in the NHL. And Florida, like I said, they do have Edmonton on a deck, so they might look ahead to that because that is a big game. And Florida did lose to them this year. Vancouver also just lost really badly to San Jose, but they're staying at home, or to Seattle. Both teams coming off losses to Seattle. Vancouver's staying at home with extra rest, too, with 2 days off. So I think the spot is better for Vancouver in that one. I would lean to Vancouver there. We don't see the percentages yet, but Florida did drop from minus 155 to minus 148. So that would be my opinion there. Buffalo at Vegas, actually one of the better games of the day. And Vegas is actually favored here. So people are going to look at this and think, oh, well, Buffalo has the way better record and they're an underdog. I think the public might look at this and think there's some value playing Buffalo as a dog here. I'm not so sure about that, man. Buffalo is starting a road trip, and they do have a little bit of rest. And while I will say that usually you're focused to start a road trip, you should be focused on a team like Vegas, but an East Coast team or Eastern time zone team having to go all the way out west to start that road trip and play late at night, a lot of times it does mess with your biological clock, man. Even though, they're coming off kind of an ugly win against Toronto where they barely got by, which should focus them. So there are some positives and some negatives for Buffalo here in the spot. Vegas is coming off beating Chicago easily. They are staying at home. They've been good in their last 2 home games. Vegas starting to turn it around here. I highly doubt they overlook Buffalo. I think they just have some momentum coming into this one. I don't think they're going to be overly confident after beating Chicago. I like Vegas here. They're down from minus 130 to minus 123. It looks like the public is leaning towards Buffalo. 62% of the tickets on them, but 86% of the cash on Vegas. I agree with the market read there. Vegas would be my lean in that one. And then the second of the TNT HBO Max doubleheader, Tampa Bay and Seattle. Another pretty ugly matchup, man. Tampa Bay, the significantly better team, obviously, but they're coming off a tough game. They lost by 2 to Carolina, but that was a pretty close game. I think there was an empty net goal at the end of that game, too. It was a close game, big game. Now, Tampa Bay is starting a road trip, a couple days off. A lot of times you will be focused, just like I said with Buffalo. You will be focused a lot of the time to start the road trip. But for Tampa Bay, it's going to be difficult to get back up off the mat after that game, I think, and having to go play a late-night game on the Pacific Coast to start the road trip and shift time zones. That's not that easy. Now, Seattle is coming off a very satisfying win over Florida, though. So they might be feeling a little bit high on themselves, too. I don't think they're going to overlook Tampa Bay, though. I would still lean to Seattle here, but I don't think it's that strong of an opinion. The money looks like it's somewhat coming in on Tampa Bay, even though they dropped to minus 185 on the money line, which is a pretty big price. I mean, Tampa Bay is the way better team here. 78% of tickets, 87% of the cash on Tampa Bay. So the money looks like it's sort of indicating on Tampa Bay. I lean slightly in the other direction there, though. But, again, I don't have anything as far as anything strong enough there. And then we got NBA. We got 8 NBA games, I think, here, starting with Miami and Charlotte. Miami coming off a loss at home to Orlando. Now, Miami did lose as a favorite, so a lot of times I will say that a team will bounce back after they lose as a favorite. Miami's had a couple of days off. Problem is that was kind of a big game against Orlando, and Miami lost a long win streak. They had like a 7-game win streak snapped, and a lot of times having a win streak snapped will hang you over. They do have a couple of big games coming up, man. They got the Lakers, Houston, San Antonio, Cleveland twice, all up next. So this Charlotte team, even though they're a hyped team right now, they could be overlooked potentially in this spot. And Miami did just go into Charlotte and beat them back on March 6th. So there is a little bit of a quick road revenge angle here for Charlotte. Charlotte coming into this game off of losing to San Antonio. The problem I have with Charlotte really is that they're returning home from a road trip. And I know I did give out Washington yesterday in the return home spot, and they didn't do badly. You know, it was a close call on that one, even though I know they missed the cover by a half point. But Charlotte has been away since Sunday, March 8th. Charlotte did have to go all the way to the Pacific Coast. Then they played San Antonio in their last game, which was a big game. Now they got to return home, so I worry about, you know, the return home spot still being a bit of a distraction here, getting back to home life. I mean, they shouldn't overlook Miami, so that should help a little bit. It's a tough spot, though. I don't like the spot for either team. Charlotte is up from 3.5 to 4.5 here. 77% of tickets, 79% of the cash on Charlotte. I actually agree with Charlotte, and it looks kind of crazy that they're laying points against the Heat. You know, like, why would the team with the worst record be laying points? Although I think everybody knows at this point that Charlotte is hot. Now, the odds makers are telling you they're better than the Heat, which is kind of weird. So that makes me wonder, like, do the Heat have injuries coming into this game? It looks like they might. Adebayo is a game-time decision here. He's questionable, so that's part of the reason why, I think. If he can go, I would imagine he will go. But I don't know, man. Because he's a game-time decision right now. He did play in the last game against Orlando. So if he's out and Miami's in the injured player spot, then, you know, then you got to really, I don't know, consider maybe looking towards Miami. Because if they're getting extra points just because Adebayo's out, again, first game out with your star player is out. A lot of times you're going to step it up and give more effort and play better without him, you know. So this is a tricky handicap here. Aside from that Adebayo injury, like if Adebayo is playing, I would lean to the Hornets here. I know that sounds counterintuitive, but if you watch me and you just listen to what I just said about the injured player situation, you know why I think that. But I actually think that with the line being 4.5, I think that might even be indicating that Adebayo is not playing, because I don't think the Hornets would be considered to be that much better than the Heat otherwise. So a lot of things to consider in that game. And if that's the case, I would actually probably swing back around and slightly lead to the Heat there. Very, very difficult handicap. Not a game I would want anything to do with. You like the Hornets? I mean, I don't like the Heat, so I'm kind of sick of the Hornet hype, though. But, you know, obviously I do not like the Heat. I got to find my old Celtics beat the Heat shirt. Oklahoma City is going to Orlando here. Oklahoma City coming off a few big wins in a row against Denver, Boston, Minnesota, all at home. Now they're going out on the road. A lot of times the momentum will carry to start the road trip. But that was a big win over Minnesota too, man. So I don't know. You know, they don't have a big game on deck, though, against Brooklyn tomorrow. So if they're going to pay attention to one of these games more than the other, it should be Orlando. Orlando's been playing better recently, but they did just lose a win streak. So just like I said with Miami, 7-game win streak. And when you lose that win streak, a lot of times it will hang you over into the next game. And Orlando was kind of in a letdown spot, I think, after they got that big win over Miami. They got taken out by Atlanta, and that was last night. And now they're returning home from a road trip, although it was only a quick Saturday, Monday road trip just to Miami and Atlanta, so that's not really that big of a deal. I don't think they're going to overlook Oklahoma City, but they have way less rest here, although that'll be factored into the line. But they're on a back-to-back with travel here. Possibly, you know, being hung over from having the win streak snapped. I actually kind of like the Thunder in this one, even though you could argue they're in a letdown spot here. The money seems to be agreeing with me. They're up to 9.5 here on the road. 61% of the tickets, 66% of the cash on the Thunder. So the money is kind of agreeing with me for now, at least on the Thunder. Again, NBA, there are situations where it does make sense to lay big road favorites. So, you know, you shouldn't completely shy away from it. I'll just throw that out there. Oh, you're born in Charlotte? Interesting. All right. Hopefully you got the hell out of there, because it seems like it's a bad situation there, given, you know, the murders that are happening on Charlotte public transportation and whatever. Detroit at Washington. I mean, Washington, Detroit did just lose a 3-game win streak, but I think that's less bad. Like, when it's a longer win, the longer the win streak is, the worse the hangover is, I think, when you lose it. Detroit lost on Sunday at Toronto. Not a great game. So maybe they will actually show up for a game against Washington. They play Washington twice here, in fact, so they don't really have anything to look ahead to here. Washington, did lose last night and unfortunately missed the cover by a half point. They're kind of in a difficult spot here. I mean, that was a return home spot. Maybe I should have just left it off the card, but they didn't exactly play that horribly in the game, though. And it was an awful spot for Golden State. Washington, they're on a back-to-back now, playing a third game in 4 days, fourth game in 6 days, fifth game in 8 days, sixth game in 10 days, whatever, most of them in different cities. Now, a lot of times when you return home and you play bad, a lot of times you will bounce back from that and play better, but it's a back-to-back. They played with some effort last night, so I don't love Washington here, man. Even though theoretically they should get up for a game against Detroit. I don't know. I mean, the money's coming in on Washington. Detroit is laying a ton of points, 18, down from 18.5 on the road here. 61% of tickets, 67% of the cash on the Wizards. I don't know, man. The money is saying the Wizards. I kind of lean the other way. I would probably lean towards laying it with Detroit, but I hate that game. I don't want anything to do with it. Yeah, stay away. The Scott Adams advice there. Indiana at the Knicks here. Kind of an interesting handicap here. Indiana just played the Knicks pretty tough 2 games ago back on Friday, so the Knicks might actually not take them lightly this time. I know it was a 9-point loss at Indiana, but that was a pretty close game towards the end of the game, man. Then Indiana was kind of, I think, hung over after that, and they lost at Milwaukee. Now, yeah, Indiana should get up for a game against the Knicks. I mean, it is a quick revenge spot still. They're not going to overlook one of the best teams in the conference like the Knicks. The Knicks, though, they're coming off barely beating Golden State, but remember, that was a return home spot. They'd been on the road for a long time. They had a really close call against Golden State. So I could see it going 2 ways here. They finished the road trip by beating Indiana, so maybe it's possible they still overlook Indiana, but it was a kind of close game against Indiana. They cut it close against Golden State, and that was one of those return home spots where the team wasn't at their best. New York was not. So sometimes when that happens, the team will play better in the next game. The Knicks were a pretty big favorite in that game and barely won, which means they should probably get scared back into focus here. So I think there are more indicators towards the Knicks being the right side here. A lot of things to consider here, but I would lean to the Knicks. The money's not agreeing with me. The Knicks are 15.5 here, 15.5-point favorites. 60% of tickets, 90% of the cash on the Pacers. So the money is indicating on the Pacers, but I don't know. I see that game a little bit differently. Like if you really dig into that box score of Indiana versus New York a couple days ago, yeah, it looks like it should be a revenge spot for Indiana, but I think it might indicate that the Knicks will take them more seriously because the game actually was kind of close. It looks like Jalen Brunson is a game-time decision, so he is questionable, so that is something to watch for in that game. The Knicks are going to be a huge favorite either way, though. I don't know how much of an impact on the line that's going to have. The Knicks are very good at home as well, 24-9. Pacers are absolutely horrible on the road, 5-29. So, of course, I mean, if you're playing the Pacers, you're not asking them to win, obviously. You're only asking them to cover. And, of course, the Knicks can win without covering pretty easily here. It's a stay away, but I kind of lean towards the Knicks there. Cleveland at Milwaukee is the first game of the NBC Peacock doubleheader. It's a bit more of an interesting game with the fact that Giannis is back. At least I think he's still playing. He can get hurt at any time, though. Cleveland is coming off a real ugly loss to Dallas, though, which was a return home spot, although from a quick road trip, but it was also a zigzag where Cleveland had demolished Dallas on the road, and then I think they just didn't take them seriously in the next game, and Dallas got them back. Now, off of an embarrassing loss, I think Cleveland will show up for Milwaukee. And by the way, the last time they were here at Milwaukee, they lost to them back on February 25th. So Maybe a little bit of a quick adjustment spot, revenge spot for Cleveland here. Milwaukee is coming off beating Indiana. I mean, not a big deal there. It ended a loss streak for them, so it's a good spot for Milwaukee, too. They shouldn't overlook Cleveland here. Staying at home off an easy win. Not a bad spot for Milwaukee either. The money is coming in on Cleveland, though, and I actually do agree with it. I think if you're getting the better team focused here, I agree with Cleveland. They're up from 9.5 to 10.5 here. It's one of those situations where I think, agree with laying the big favorite on the road. 50% of tickets, 66% of the cash on the Cavs, but I do actually agree with it. Giannis is a game-time decision here, so he is questionable. So, again, that's something to keep in mind. He played in the last game, but didn't play like his full complement of minutes in that one. I don't know if maybe the game was just in control and then they took him out for that reason, or if he actually got injured in the game. I don't know, but that is definitely something to keep an eye on, because if Giannis isn't playing, then you're probably going to be laying too many points with Cleveland. And Milwaukee, first game without him might step up their game a bit. Phoenix at Minnesota. This is a very weird spot for Phoenix. They were in Boston last night, and they had a lead late in the game. They were winning by 1 with like 6 minutes left in the game, and then the Celtics turned it on and wound up winning the game by 8. I think if you had Phoenix plus the points in that game, you got really unlucky, I think, in that game. Actually, they were 8.5, it looks like, so they still covered. So never mind, because Phoenix, I thought it was like 6.5. That would have been a brutal beat if you had Phoenix plus 6.5 there. Celtics won, thankfully, because it's my Boston Celtics. Very, very weird for Phoenix, though, putting in a huge effort in that game, and now no rest. They have to travel to Minnesota, and they do have San Antonio on deck, too. Now, they shouldn't overlook Minnesota, because Minnesota's really good, but that is just such a brutal scheduling spot. It's just bizarre. They did have a couple of days off before the Boston game, but it's still really weird. It's kind of a lot of travel to do with no time off. Now, Minnesota's not in the greatest spot either, though, because they're returning home from a road trip. So maybe the schedule makers kind of know that and like, hey, let's just have both teams be in bad spots here. Minnesota went to the Pacific Coast, finished with a game against Oklahoma City, where that game was not really that close. They did lose by double digits. It was a double-digit game for the final, like, several minutes of the game. Still, they went to the Pacific Coast, had to go to Oklahoma City. They're returning home from all that. They've been away for a week. Could be a spot where, maybe they're not totally in a focused, mode here, because you got to get back to home life. You got stuff to do. Not the greatest spot for Minnesota here either. It's a difficult call. The money is coming in on the Suns. Oh, here's the other problem. The T-Wolves dropped from 8.5 to 4, so that means there's an injury, and I looked at it, and yes, there is. Anthony Edwards is not playing for the T-Wolves in this game, which is why they're down to a 4-point favorite here. He played in their last game, so it is an injured player theory spot for the T-Wolves here, which, again, I think the line tends to overreact when a star player like that is out. The team will usually put in a big effort with him out, so that might actually focus the T-Wolves a little bit more here. And you get a little bit of line value usually, again, because it overreacts a little bit, plus that extra motivation. So that would actually put me on the side of the T-Wolves in this game. I would lean towards laying the points with the T-Wolves. 55% of tickets, 82% of the cash on the Suns, though. But I don't agree with that, and sometimes those percentages are kind of misleading. Like, when the line has dropped that much, like, a lot of times some of that money could have been at the higher price. You know what I'm saying? Like, a lot of that money could have been at the 8.5. There's a huge difference between 8.5 and 4 here. And with the injured player spot coming into effect, I would lean to the T-Wolves there. Philadelphia at Denver is the second of the NBC Peacock doubleheader. Really great there, because Philadelphia literally has nobody playing for them. They're still without George, Embiid, Maxey, Oubre. All those guys are still out for Philadelphia, which, of course, does mean Denver's going to be a gigantic favorite here. Philadelphia having to travel into elevation for this, but they do have momentum. They did just beat Brooklyn and Portland, which is kind of whatever. Now they're starting a road trip. They don't have a bigger game on deck, so I think they will show up focused for this game at the very least. Denver in a bit of a trickier spot, because they did just have to go to L.A. They're coming off a series of big games, man. I mean, they played Oklahoma City close on the road, beat Houston in a blowout. The next night went to San Antonio and somehow still beat them on a back-to-back. Then they had to go to LA, and I told you that was a pretty ugly spot for Denver there. I was correct about the Lakers getting the win there. Kind of quick revenge for the Lakers, too, there, if you want to call it that. That game went into overtime as well. Now, Denver does have 2 days off. That game was Saturday, but they're returning home. I know it was only a 2-day road trip, but still, they're coming off another big game against the Lakers. They're having to travel one time zone here. Come back home into elevation. And again, believe it or not, Denver hasn't been as good at home. 18-13 at home is not that impressive. Philadelphia, believe it or not, is above 500 on the road, which is not that bad. Although, of course, we're looking at a Philadelphia team that has nobody now. But if you like Philadelphia here, you don't need them to win the game. You only need them to cover. Denver does not have a bigger game on deck. They play Memphis tomorrow. I wish they had a bigger game on deck because then it might actually be a play for me on Philadelphia here. But as it stands right now, there's no way. Plus, it is a home game, on TV for Denver, so maybe they'll get up for it. But again, you could easily take Philadelphia for granted because they have nobody playing for them right now. So I would lean to Philadelphia in this one. The money is strongly agreeing with me on that one. It looks like the Nuggets are 15.5-point favorites. 58% of the tickets on them, 86% of the cash on the Sixers, though. I agree with that opinion, with that market read there. I would take the points with Philly if I was going to play that one, but that one doesn't make my card either. And then a really ugly game to finish off the NBA slate, San Antonio at Sacramento. San Antonio did just get their, not revenge really, because they beat the Clippers the first time too. They actually kind of struggled with the Clippers again last night. So they're on the Pacific time zone now, or in the Pacific time zone, so they're not changing time zones now. But they had another pretty close call against the Clippers last night. The Clippers, just like in the first game, I think the Clippers were out to a big lead early in that game. They played pretty close, I think, in San Antonio. Wound up getting out of there with a win again against the Clippers and also didn't cover. This game, though, San Antonio actually had the game in hand for quite a while there. Like, once they took the game over in the second half, they were up almost 20 points. But it did get really close at the end. It was within 4 points in the final, minute of the game. So San Antonio definitely took their foot off the gas in that one. So it wasn't the same as the first game where we had a winner on the Clippers on March 6th there in the San Antonio home game there. Clippers had the lead for almost that entire game that time. That wasn't the case this time. I think San Antonio just started to pack it in early. So even though we have San Antonio on a back-to-back here, I don't think it's as big of a deal because that game was basically in hand at the end of it. Wemby did still play 34 minutes in the game, though. Fox, 29. Castle, 36. So some of their best players did pretty much play the full amount of minutes they would usually play. I mean, it is pretty easy to overlook Sacramento as well on a back-to-back, third game in 4 days, all in different cities. They got Phoenix on deck, who is a playoff team, so they might look ahead to that a little bit. Sacramento looks like they're still at least putting in effort here because they did just win again. They've won 4 of their last 5 games, believe it or not. They just beat Utah, and they've had 1 day off, and they're staying at home. So I think the spot actually is better for the Kings here. Kings look like they're a public side, though, which seems impossible to me. No public bettor is going to be on the Kings here. I don't understand that. 62% of the tickets, 55% of the cash on them. So the market read is saying to lay the points with the Spurs at minus 13.5. I don't really agree with that one. I think I would lean to the Kings in that game. But it's not like the worst spot for San Antonio, really. So that one is definitely a stay away. And that is going to do it. That's the whole board today. Went into probably too much detail on the NIT, but that's going to do it. The tournament officially kicks off tonight. Well, sort of, with the play-in games. So, once again, for the people that care about that, I do lean towards Howard and Texas in those 2 games, in the play-in games. But we'll see what happens. I mean, it's not part of filling out the bracket. Those games are not on my card, so we can just relax and enjoy the games. And the one play I have today is South Alabama plus the points. We're going to the NIT. I'm just going to my bread and butter here, man. Fading the most disappointed team going into the NIT. Again, when you see one of those true blue bloods that's always in the actual tournament and vying for a championship, and now they're in the NIT, that's where you want to look. And I think the situation sets up really nicely based on what the teams did in the last games too. So, and the little brother, big brother situation. So we're going with South Alabama plus the points for the only play today. Ken Bum, by the way, has that number at about 18, but his is all, analytics, so he doesn't take into account the situation. So I think I'm fine with anything in that 17.5 range. Hopefully is good. Thank you, sir. Thanks for hanging out, everybody. That's going to do it. Learn to Toad on Twitter. Learn to Toad on Instagram. Like, subscribe. We got to boost this channel. I got to figure out how to make some changes here to boost this thing up a little bit. I'm trying to tag everything with March Madness so people can find it that way too. I'm doing my bracket analysis still. I'll have my men's bracket show. I'm probably going to do it tomorrow, like I said. And, a lot of times I do like to have all the information that we can, so I might do it late, tomorrow night once we see who's going to win that Miami-Ohio game. We're gonna fill out the bracket. It's going to be chalky, though, I can tell you that. We're going to use game theory for it as well, though. Just like I did with the women's, so go check out my women's bracket show if you missed that. I did it yesterday. Not even caring who wins the play-in, really. Although I think I am gonna watch. Well, I'm not gonna watch, but I'm gonna keep my eye on who actually does win those play-ins and whatever. So, there is a chance that there are like a few games on that bracket that I might change in the first round, but I don't think I'm changing anything of note there in like the final rounds and whatever. I can put my link to my bracket in the show description if you want, although I think if I do that, it might dox me, so whatever. But you guys can go watch my show. You'll know which one. Like the games that I might switch at all, or there was one first-round game, I forget which one it was, that I mentioned during the show where I was kind of like, yeah, I don't know which way I want to go with this. And then the two games that involved the play-ins, I might decide to switch them, but I don't know, because I know I'm taking the play-in against Baylor in the women's bracket, and then the other one I didn't take the play-in, but I want to see like what the line actually winds up being on those games to really figure it out. Sydney Sweeney is the thumbnail. Maybe. I don't know. I can't get banned here from YouTube, though, although I guess if she's clothed, I guess you could still have cleavage, I guess, here on YouTube. I don't know. I have no idea. But anyway, yeah, go check all that stuff out. We're on audio here as well. Apple, Spotify. Go listen over there. Give me good reviews there. Covered in Uke is my Uke channel on YouTube. You can check that out. Patreon.com/LearnToToad for some bonus stuff there that I never pay attention to. Losercast will be back tonight at 10 p.m. Eastern. I believe I'm going to be making an appearance maybe on Nephilim Death Squad. They're going to be live tonight at I think around 9, and I believe they will have a special guest in person in studio with them, which is not going to be me, but it's somebody that if you watch Tower Gang, you could probably guess who it's going to be. Well, maybe you can't. I don't know. So they will have an in-studio guest there, and I think myself and Tyler might both potentially make an appearance remotely on that show. I think Tyler is actually probably just not even going to do Losercast because he's a loser and he just doesn't show up for it. But I will. I believe I will be on Losercast. I've only missed one episode, and it wasn't a Tuesday one. So I think I'm going to do NDS for about an hour and then switch over to Losercast. So I'm going to try to do both. That's going to do it. Subscribe to the channel here, and you'll get notified whenever I go live with all this stuff. That's going to do it. Well, not really. I mean, Tower Gang is never getting back together, even though we should, because I think we really had something that could actually take off. But that's going to do it. Peace for now, guys.